That Lass of LOWRIE'S by Hodgson Burnett. Chapter 4. Mr. Barham had fallen into the habit of turning to Annis for it when he required information concerning people and things. In her desultory pilgrimages, Annis saw all that he missed and heard much that he was deaf to. The rough, hard-faced men and boisterous girls who passed to and from their work at the mine drew her to the window whenever they made their appearance. She longed to know something definite of them, to get a little nearer to their unprepossessing life. Sometimes the men and women passing caught glimpses of her, and asking each other who she was, decided upon her relationship to the family. "Who's that parson's lass?" somebody said. "Who's noan so bad looking neither, if who wasn't such a bit of a thing." The people who had regarded Mr. Barham with a spice of disfavour still could not look with ill nature upon this pretty girl. The slatternly women nudged each other as she passed, and the playing children started after their usual fashion, but even the hardest-natured matron could find nothing more condemnatory to say than "Who's knowin' Lancashire? That's plain as nose on a body's face," or "There isna much on her, at any rate. Who's a bit of a weakly like lass, without much blood in her." Now and then Annis caught the sound of their words, but she was used to being commented upon. She had learned that people whose lives have a great deal of hard, common discomfort and struggle acquire a tendency to deprecation, almost as a second nature. It is easier to bear one's own misfortunes than to bear the good fortune of better used people. That is the insult added by fate to injury. Wrigham was a crooked, rambling, cross-grained little place, and to a casual observer, unaccustomed to its inhabitants as a species, by no means prepossessing. From the one wide street with its jumble of old tumble-down shops and glaring new ones, branched out narrow, uphill or downhill thoroughfares, edged by colliers' houses, with an occasional tiny provision shop, where bread and bacon were ranged alongside of potatoes and flabby cabbages, ornithological specimens made of pale sweet cake, and adorned with startling black-currant eyes, rested unsteadily against the window-pane, a sore temptation to the juvenile populace. It was in one of these side streets that Annis met with her first adventure. Turning the corner, she heard the sharp yelp of a dog among a group of children, followed almost immediately by a ringing of loud, angry, boyish voices, a sound of blows and cries, and a violent scuffle. Annis paused for a few seconds, looking over the heads of the excited little crowd, and then made her way to it, and in a minute was in the heart of it. The two boys who were the principal figures were fighting frantically, scuffling, kicking, biting, and laying on vigorous blows with not unscientific fists. Now and then a fierce, red boyish face was to be seen, and then the rough head ducked and the fight waxed fiercer and hotter, while the dog, a small, shrewd, sharp-nosed terrier, barked at the combatants' heels, snapping up one pair, but not at the other, and plainly enjoying the excitement. "Boys," cried Annis, "what's the matter?" "They're fighting," remarked a philosophical young bystander, with placid, unabated interest, "and Jud Bates'll win." It was so astonishing a thing that any outsider should think of interfering, and there was something so decided in the girlish voice addressing them, that almost at the moment the combatants fell back, panting heavily, breathing vengeance in true boy fashion, and evidently resenting the unexpected intrusion. "What is it all about?" demanded the girl. "Tell me." The crowd gathered close around her to stare. The terrier sat down breathless, his red tongue hanging out, his tail beating the ground. One of the boys was his master, it was plain at a glance, and as a natural consequence he had felt it his duty to assist to the full extent of his powers. The boy who was his master, a sturdy, ragged 10-year-old, was the first to speak. Why couldn't he let me a be then? He asked irately. I wasn't a-doing out Tim. Yeah, thou was, retorted the opponent. Nay, I wasna. Yeah, thou was. Well, said Anise, what was he doing? Aye, cried the first youngster, thou tell her if thou can. Who hit the first punce? Excitedly doubling his fist again. I didna. Nay, thou didna, but thou did summat else. Thou punched at Nib with thy clog, and hit him aside at th' head, and when I punched thee, and I'd do it again for— Wait a minute, cried Anise, holding up her little gloved finger. Who is Nib? Nib's my dog, surlily, and them's as puncing him has gotten to punch me. Anise bent down and patted the small animal. He seems a very nice dog, she said. What did you kick him for? Nib's master was somewhat mollified. A person who could appreciate the virtues of the best terrier in Wigan could not be regarded wholly with contempt or even indifference. He kicked him for nowt, he answered. He's always at either him or me. He bust my kite and he cribbed my marbles, didn't he? Appealing to the bystanders. Aye, he did. I seed him crib marbles mysen. He were mad 'cause Judd were winning, and then he kicked Nib. Judd bent down to pat Nib himself, not without a touch of pride in his manifold injuries, and the readiness with which they were attested to. Aye, he said, and I didna set on him at first neither. I never set on him till he punched Nib. He may bust my kite and steal my marbles, and he may call me ill names, but he shanna kick Nib, see there. It was evident that Nib's enemy was the transgressor. He was grievously in the minority. Nobody seemed to side with him, and everybody seemed ready, when once the tongues were loosed, to say a word for Judd and the best terrier in Wigan. For a few minutes Anise could scarcely make herself heard. You are a good boy to take care of your dog, she said to Judd, and though fighting is not a good thing, perhaps, if I'd been a boy, gravely deciding against moral suasion in one rapid glance at the enemy, perhaps if I had been a boy, I would have fought myself. You are a coward, she added with incisive scorn to the other lad, who slinked sulkily out of sight. Out Sammy Craddock, lounging at his window, clay pipe in hand, watched Anise as she walked away, and gave vent to his feelings in a shrewd chuckle. He commented, so that's thou Parson's lass, is it? Well, who may be the same mate, but who isna o' the same grain, I'll warrant. Who's a rare un, who is, for a wench. Out Sammy's amused chuckles and exclamations of, he who's a rare un that who is, for a wench, at last drew his wife's attention. The good woman pounced upon him sharply. Thou'rt an old yammerhead, she said. What art thou rumbling on about now? Who is it as is such a rare un? Old Sammy burst into a fresh chuckle, rubbing his knees with both hands. Why, said he, I'll warrant thou couldna guess if thou tried, but I'll give thee a try. Who dost thou think were out in street just now, in the thick of a fight amongst lads? I know thou'st never guess. Nay, happen I canna, and I dunna know as I care so much, neither, testily. Why, slapping his knee, thou Parson's lass, a little wench not much higher nor thy waist, and wi' a bit of a face like skim milk, but steady and full of pluck as an oud un. Nay, now, thou doesna say so. What was she doing, and how did she come there? Thou mun ha' been dreaming. Nowt o' sort. I seed her as plain as I see thee, and heard every word she said. Thou'st just a seen her. Who mad as if hoo lived wi' lads all her days. Judd Bates and that young marplot o' Thorns were feating about Nib, at it tooth and nail, and at last sees 'em and marches into t' thick and sets 'em to reets. You should ha' seen her. And who tells Judd as he's a good lad to tak care o' his dog, and who doesna know but what who'd ha' fout herself in his place, and who calls Jack Thorns a coward and turns her back on him, and ends up with telling Judd to bring Tarriot to Rectory to see her." "Well," exclaimed Mrs. Craddock, "did you ever hear like?" "I wish thou parson had seed her," chuckled her spouse irreverently. "That sort isn't in his line. He'd ha' waved his stick as if he'd been king and council in one and rated 'em from top round at ladder. He canna get down from his perch. The old lad'll stick there till he gets a bit too heavy, and then he'll come down with a crash, ladder and all. But th' lass is a different Malc." It was in this manner that Miss Barham introduced herself to the village of Riggan and her father's parishioners. Having attracted the attention of Sammy Craddock, she was now fairly before the public. Sammy being an oracle among his associates, newcomers usually passed through his hands and were condemned or approved by him. His pipe and his criticisms upon society in general provided him with occupation. Too old to fight and work, he was too shrewd to be ignored. When he could not make himself felt, he would make himself heard. Accordingly, when he condescended to inform a select and confidential audience that "thou parson's lass was a rare and lass as she was," the masculine opinion of Riggan on the subject of the weaker sex was a rather disparaging one, the chances of the rector's daughter began, so to speak, to look up. If Sammy Craddock found virtue in the newcomer, it was possible that such virtue might exist, at least in a negative form, and open enmity was rendered unnecessary and even impolitic. A faint interest began to be awakened. When Anise passed through the streets, the slatternly, baby-laden women looked at her curiously, and in a manner not absolutely unfriendly. She might not be so bad after all, even if she did have London ways, and was smiled upon by fortune. At any rate, she differed from the parson himself, which was in her favour.